What if one of the world's most beloved animals never actually existed? A fake? What if the giant panda, a symbol of peace, a marketing mascot, and probably one of the cutest animals out there, was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie? A hoax designed for political power and money? What if we're being fooled into believing an animal which is so popular is really just an illusion? Why is it that all pandas in the world are owned and leased, yes, leased, by the Chinese government? And why do some zoologists, photographers, and even costume designers claim it doesn't add up and that pandas either don't really exist or were created in a lab? Let's start and let's go way back in time, thousands of years in fact. The Chinese culture is one of, if not the oldest cultures in the world. Back then it was one of the only literate cultures, with plays and poems and pottery and art, philosophers and visionaries and dynasties. But something was missing: the pandas. Even though pandas are native only to China and the Far East, they do not appear in any of the arts. They are not on potteries, there are no plays that include them or reference them, and they are not spoken of by Sun Tzu or Confucius. The earliest paintings of them are only about 100 years old, if that. Pandas just suddenly appeared, out of nowhere. Zodiac astrology doesn't mention them either. Rats, tigers, goats, snakes, and even dragons are zodiac animals. But the panda, not a whiff. And trust me, you can smell them a mile off. Surely a unique animal like the panda would be somewhere in Chinese history. Martial arts is another Chinese custom. With all different forms, martial arts use animals like the praying mantis, the crane, the leopard, and once again the dragon. But pandas? Nope, nowhere. The film industry thinks so though, with the Kung Fu Panda animation franchise. But pandas are not a form of martial arts, and never has been. Is this Hollywood mocking us yet again? It doesn't matter how far back you go or how deep you dig, pandas just simply don't exist. So the question is, do they exist today? The first recorded reference of the giant panda was in 1869. That's the year Heinz was founded, or the year Gandhi was born. That's how recent it was. A French priest and explorer, Armand David, was brought a strange skin from a strange bear by his hunters. A black and white coarse fur with an unusual smell and makeup. I don't mean makeup as in face paint, although let's not rule anything out. I mean the fur's coarseness. It was unique to anything that David had seen. Now you would think that would be on display in a museum somewhere, right? Nope. It's in the Smithsonian archives, in a vault, not to be touched, not to be seen, and definitely not to be studied. It would take another 50 years, in the 1920s, before one of these strange bears would be shot and first observed. It was shot by the Roosevelt brothers. Well, that name seems quite convenient. And another 15 years or so before an infant of the species was spotted and studied. This was now the 1930s, and like all new species found, a name was needed: giant panda. This was probably named after the red panda, which was already a known species but not related in any way. The red panda is related to raccoons and skunks, etc., but the giant panda is a bear. The ferocious meat-eating carnivores that... Oh no, hold on. That's not what the panda bear is. The panda has the teeth of a carnivore. It has the digestive system of a carnivore. At first glance it looks like a carnivore, but it ain't. Far from it. It only eats bamboo. That on its own has led many to believe that they don't actually exist. See, the bamboo that the giant panda eats is no good for them. First, they have to eat in massive quantities to get the nutrients a large bear needs. Second, their digestive tract is too short to process it. Bamboo actually hurts the bear and harms its intestines. They just don't have the enzymes to break it down. That's according to zoologists, not me. So is this the first evidence that they don't actually exist? This bear, the giant cuddly panda, also sleeps for at least 12 hours a day. This limits the feeding time, and remember how much it has to feed. So basically it sleeps for 4 hours, eats for 4 hours, sleeps again for 4 hours, and so on and so on. So how does it find the time to have fun? As you can see, the giant panda is clumsy, awkward, non-aggressive, and has a sub-zero IQ, but it somehow survives in the wild allegedly. The last recorded estimate of population figures for the giant panda is just over 1800. That's remarkable, considering that they cannot and do not even have the know-how to defend themselves from predators. What's even more remarkable is they don't know how to mate. Even the dumbest of species know how to mate. The giant panda has to be shown or at least coaxed into mating. Is there folk walking around the wild showing these non-aggressive bears how to have a bit of hokey pokey? If there are, it would only be a part-time job, as the female giant panda is only fertile for a maximum of 36 hours. What, per month, Beau? No, 36 hours per year. That's basically 1.5 days a year. How on earth can a species survive the wild with so many odds stacked against them? Dunno, but it must happen sometimes. So if all this is true, which it is, how come there are pictures and videos of pandas? Some think that all the pandas in the zoos are either animatronics, unlikely, men in panda suits, doubtful, or painted dogs, irrefutable. It was also confirmed that a zoo in Taiwan used a sun bear and painted it, or more likely dyed it, to look like a giant panda. They have apologised after admitting it to the public. If they have to lie to the public about the giant panda, the question has to be why. There is a theory, and this theory is called panda diplomacy. Some think that the giant panda is an animal that was manufactured or bred in a lab years ago by the Chinese government. Over the years, this government has used it as a bargaining tool for diplomatic purposes. It is said that the Chinese lease the animals to countries for up to $1 million a year. If you're good to China, you get a giant panda. If you're a bad boy and say bad things about China, they will take one away. As recent as Barack Obama's time in presidency, he was urged by the Chinese government not to meet up with the Dalai Lama. Obama ignored their request, and coincidentally, a zoo in America had to give back a panda that it had on display. Just a coincidence? Maybe. Now look up the names of all captive giant pandas. I bet you won't find one that isn't called Chi Chi, or Huan Huan, or Ling Ling. I don't think you're going to find one called George, or Kevin, or even Matilda. Like I said, all giant pandas are owned by the Chinese government. Here's a fact for you. Do you know that all the swans in the UK are owned by King Charles? They used to be owned by the Queen, but Charlie has inherited them. Sorry, I know that has nothing to do with the pandas, but it's a bit strange that elite folk can own anything they like. And if you disapprove, tough. Talking of poop, the panda poops about 40 times a year. To me, that alone proves they are fake. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, the panda is a bargaining chip for the Chinese government. The trade is booming and lucrative, so the Chinese will do anything to keep these strange bears in the public. That's why it's the most popular animal in the Eastern world. And probably if you ask any kid in the Western world to name a cute animal, they're going to say the panda. Back in 1961, they gave one to a London zoo. Why, you may ask? What did London do to deserve one? That very same year, the World Wildlife Fund was set up. And what has been the WWF's logo ever since? That's right, the giant panda. Aw, how cute. There is so much evidence, so many facts that point to this bear either not existing at all, or at the very least being created in a lab years ago. Here's some more. When a panda does get pregnant, the embryo allegedly goes into a kind of arrested development. Why? No one knows. Eventually it restores its natural state and is born. Very weird. The Chinese will eat anything, but not the giant panda. Not because of its symbolism, but because it tastes disgusting. Not that I'd like to try one, but a Chinese farmer was once caught illegally keeping the panda and had to hide the evidence. He cooked them up for his friends. They were that disgusted with his culinary skills, not because of what he'd done, but the fact that the meat tasted so rank that they grassed on him to the government. He was jailed for 2 years. Nowadays, killing a giant panda is punishable by death in the Far East. They are that important to the whole structure and economics of the country. I know by now a lot of you are probably muttering, "Aw, cute little panda bears. Of course they exist." And of course, I could be wrong. But show me a photographed picture or video of one in the wild. Can't, can you? Okay, there's been a couple, but I go back to animatronics or men in suits, or more reasonably, captive pandas planted there for a photo shoot. Here's another fact. The giant panda has slit-shaped eyes. Stop it. I know what you're thinking. But the giant panda has eyes that of a cat. No other bear species have pupils like this. Why just the panda bear? They can see in colour allegedly, and are prone to eye diseases and often go blind. Now that's a trait for either interbreeding or a created animal. Things just don't add up with the giant panda. A strange fact that I can't put down to either them not existing or the fact that they are created is they only pee upside down. Apart from bats who sleep upside down, the giant panda is the only animal to do this. Instincts messed up perhaps? DNA fumbled by the lab? Doesn't matter how you mask the strange facts, the giant panda bear isn't normal. From its carnivore teeth and its digestive system, its missing history, and the way the Chinese use an animal like the panda bear to get what it wants. Something isn't right. Do they exist? Were they created as a lab experiment? One that actually went right, kind of? Have you ever experienced a close-up with a giant panda bear? Was it a sweaty man in a panda suit? Did you spot any wires coming out of it? This whole concept had me stumped from the start. I just don't know what to think. So, you be the judge.